What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the update that we were expecting earlier in the week was delayed, but we did end up getting it late last night, and this has quite a few changes and fixes and also a couple little additions. So today I'm going to be covering all of the important details, and the first big thing here, at least multiplayer wise, is they added a brand new map, and this is called Khandor Hideout. So we'll do a little bit of a walkthrough here so you guys can see what it looks like. It's a relatively small map, and overall, my initial impressions by just walking around and having a look at the map is, I think I'm actually really going to like this map quite a bit. It seems to be that perfect size where there's going to be lots of action, you're never going to be far away from the action, but at the same time, it's big enough that it's not just going to be random chaos like Shipment, for instance. Also, the general layout is quite simple, but there's a good amount of complexity to it as well. There is room for creativity. It's not just a really boring layout where there's just the 3 lanes and you're locked into those 3 lanes and you can't really do anything about it. There's lots of room for jumping around from point to point and parkour and stuff like that. So, like I said, with my initial impression, I think this map's going to play out great, as long as there aren't any serious spawn issues. At this point, I'm just trying to get this video up quickly for you guys, so I haven't really played on this map in a public match yet. But as long as the spawns are okay, I think I'm going to like it quite a bit. Now, let's hop into some of the other important gameplay-related things that changed with this update. Keep in mind, with my patch note videos, I focus on the things that actually matter and things that most people will actually notice. I don't tend to cover the fixes to bugs that many of us have probably never even experienced before. So if you do want to see all those little nitty-gritty details, I of course will leave a link to the patch notes in the description down below. But the main focus with my patch notes videos is to break the gameplay-related changes down into much greater detail than the patch notes provide. And let's start it off with the stuff that's primarily focused around multiplayer. The first thing you've probably already heard some talk about, they have added Dragon's Breath rounds to the Model 680 shotgun. Now on top of that, they also added the ability to add detachable magazines for the Model 680, which is interesting, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the first thing I want to talk about, and the thing you're probably most interested in, is these Dragon's Breath rounds. Now, in order to unlock Dragon's Breath rounds, what you have to do is get 15 kills shortly after reloading using the Model 680 shotgun. Once you get that challenge done, you will have these Dragon's Breath rounds, and these are incendiary rounds, so when you shoot your target, not only will they deal the initial damage up front, they will also apply a burn effect for a short period of time that will deal extra damage. Now, pretty much any time we've ever seen incendiary rounds for shotguns in previous Call of Duty games, there's been a lot of complaints and even outrage surrounding them. So let's see if this is actually overpowered or if it is balanced nicely with these standard rounds. Now, the game does state that when you're using these Dragon's Breath rounds, you will have a reduced damage range, and it turns out that holds true for your maximum hit potential. So the distance at which you're able to get a hit marker with the shotgun, when you have no attachments on the Model 680 and no Dragon's Breath rounds, our maximum hit potential is about 26 meters, which is quite a long distance. At that range, though, it would take so many shots to kill that it's kind of irrelevant. But it is 26 meters that you're able to hit your enemies, whereas with the Dragon's Breath rounds, that is cut down to 20 meters. So definitely a noticeable difference in your maximum hit potential, but like I said, this is not a practical situation to be shooting at your enemy anyways, so in practical terms, this doesn't really make that much of a difference. As for our maximum one-hit kill potential when aiming down sight and making sure we hit as many pellets as possible, without Dragon's Breath rounds, this is 14 meters. With Dragon's Breath rounds, this is 14 meters. So we actually have the exact same one-hit kill potential with or without Dragon's Breath rounds. Although one thing I did notice here is it looks like it's a bit more forgiving with the Dragon's Breath rounds at this range. So you don't have to hit quite as many pellets. You don't have to be on point quite as much when using Dragon's Breath in order to get that one-shot kill. The only downside to that, though, is you're dealing damage over time, so it's going to give the enemy a little bit of time to shoot back at you. And in some really close situations, this could lead to a kill trade where it wouldn't have been a kill trade otherwise if you weren't using Dragon's Breath, because you would have dealt all the damage at once and just dropped them immediately. So that's kind of the trade-off there. It's more forgiving, so you can miss pellets a bit more often, but there is a slight delay before the enemy actually dies. Additionally, I did want to point out that technically EOD is a counter to this, so if the enemy player has EOD, you will see a little indicator pop up, indicating that they are taking less damage because they have EOD on, but in my experience, this didn't really change the one-shot kill potential by a noticeable amount. It seems like it takes a little bit longer for that burn damage to end up killing the enemy player, so they get a little bit more time to shoot back at you before they die, but EOD doesn't look like it's generally going to save your life against somebody using Dragon's Breath. Now, that's when we're aiming down sight. That's assuming like perfect conditions where we're hitting as many pellets as possible. What happens when we're hip firing? Again, assuming no other attachments are on this, because we want to keep things nice and controlled here. Our maximum hip fire one-shot kill potential without Dragon's Breath is about 10 meters, give or take about half a meter. And at this point, you do have to be a little bit lucky that you get just the right pellet spread and you're hitting as many pellets as possible. And once again, I noticed the same trend with Dragon's Breath. It is still about 10 meters or so for your maximum one-hit kill potential while hip firing. But once again, you don't have to be nearly as precise. You can be a little bit off target, and as long as you're still hitting a good chunk of pellets, you're going to be getting that kill on an enemy. So looking at it overall, are Dragon's Breath rounds overpowered compared to the standard shells? At this point, I think maybe. It's definitely going to lead to more consistent one-shot kill situations where you're not going to need to rack the slide and fire another shot like you would if you weren't using Dragon's Breath. Additionally, EOD isn't really an effective counter here. Like I said, it might buy you like a little bit of extra time to try and finish the kill against the guy, but it's not going to save your life most of the time. So with the way it's currently balanced, it is looking like Dragon's Breath is kind of the obvious choice for the Model 680, and more often than not, it's going to be helping you rather than hurting you. So just based on this initial analysis, perhaps they could have made EOD a little bit more resistant to this Dragon's Breath so that it will actually help you survive these situations a lot more often than they currently are. I think that would make it so there's a bit more of a trade-off to using Dragon's Breath, and there's a risk involved where if you're playing against EOD users, then it wouldn't be in your best interest to be using Dragon's Breath against them. But that's just my opinion based on the current state of that. Of course, I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. But we do have some more stuff to cover, so let's get into the next thing. And this is, with the Model 680, like I said, they also added detachable magazines. Now, there are detachable magazines for each configuration, so for the standard buckshot, for the slugs, as well as for the Dragon's Breath. These detachable magazines hold 6 rounds, whereas the standard tube on the 680 will hold 8 rounds, so there's a little bit of a downside there. However, the big upside here is you reload all 6 shells all at once with the detachable magazine, and if you're not using a detachable magazine, you have to load each shell individually. So just comparing the two, to give it a fair test, I wanted to see how long it would take you to reload 6 shells if you weren't using a detachable magazine. And that took a total of 3.07 seconds, which is quite a long time. That's a pretty slow reload. And when we compare that to the detachable magazine, this takes just 1.95 seconds. So it is significantly faster to reload 6 shells. However, you have to also consider if you're not using a detachable magazine, you can always just really quickly pop a shell back into the shotgun and just reload 1 shell at a time if you'd like. Like as soon as you're done with a situation, if you fire 1 or 2 shots, you can just quickly pop those 2 shots back in and you're good to go for the next situation. And in those cases, you'll be topping up much faster than a full-on reload of a detachable magazine. So definitely some pros and cons there. Honestly, I think this area would just come down to personal preference. I don't really see myself using the detachable magazine all that often with the 680, just because most of the situations I run into, I'm only firing 1 or 2 shots, and then I've got time for a really quick reload. Now, on top of this, they did fix something that I ran into a lot with sniper rifles, and that is if you fire a shot with a sniper rifle, you can hear the bolt cycle, but then you swap weapons before you fully push that bolt forward and get the next round in the chamber. Then, when you switch back to that sniper rifle, you have to chamber a round again. They have changed that, so now when you swap back to the sniper rifle, that round should be chambered for you. Now, the next thing is with the amped perk, they increased the amped reload speeds for the Strela, the Pila, and the Joker. Now, I didn't have any pre-patch tests on this, so I'm going to refer to Sour's video. He made an excellent video breaking down amped in great detail. I'm going to leave that link down below. I do encourage you guys to check that out anyways, because there's a lot to learn from that video, aside from what I'm going to be sharing today. But let's have a look at the pre-patch versus post-patch reload times when using amped on these launchers. Pre-patch with the Pila, it would reload in 2.567 seconds. Whereas post-patch, it's 2.469 seconds. So that's a pretty much negligible change when it comes to reload speed, but it has improved very slightly. As for the Strela, this is the big change. Pre-patch, the Strela actually gained no reload benefit whatsoever with the amped perk. It was bugged out for some reason, and it has been bugged this whole time. That has finally been fixed with this update. Pre-patch, it would take you 4.2 seconds to reload a Strela with or without amped. Now, if you are using Amped, you will get a reload time of 2.487 seconds, which is significantly faster. So that is a huge buff to the Strela when using Amped. As for the Joker, pre-patch it would take 1.15 seconds to reload, and post-patch it's 0.934 seconds. So again, just like with the Pila, it definitely did improve a little bit, but not by a huge margin. As for the next thing, there's a couple fixes with EOD. The first one is they fixed an issue where the thermite, when you hit an EOD player with a thermite, or you were dealing damage using a thermite against an EOD player, it wouldn't actually display for you that the enemy had EOD and that they were taking less damage because of that. Now that icon should show up properly when dealing damage to an EOD user with a thermite. And on top of this, they said that stuck thermite and thermite bolts will no longer have their damage reduced. And what this means is if you stick an EOD user with a thermite bolt from the crossbow or a thrown thermite, they should be dying 100% of the time now, unless they're able to activate stim in time. You will be guaranteed to get that kill on them. Now, a couple other little quality of life things they added or changed here for multiplayer is with a tactical insert, when your tac insert gets destroyed, now you will get a little icon that shows up on your screen that shows you that it has been destroyed. So that should give you a bit of an indicator that somebody is by your tac insert, or at the very least that it's been destroyed in some way. And they've also doubled the amount of stopping power ammo that they'll give you when you're using akimbo weapons. Pre-patch, if I remember correctly, it would only give you the additional ammo to cover the magazine for one of the guns in your hand when you had akimbo weapons, and therefore you'd actually be losing ammo when using stopping power, and therefore you wouldn't be gaining that full benefit of stopping power that you normally get with all of the other guns, where it gives you entirely new rounds on top of your reserve ammo. Additionally, a great quality of life fix is now kill cams will properly show if the enemy player was using stopping power rounds. You can actually see their ammo count on the bottom right of the screen, and it will display as yellow ammo if they're using stopping power rounds. And that's nice for just figuring out like what the heck just happened in that situation and how did he melt me so fast. That will help break some of the confusion up. Also, they made it so it's more clear if the enemy was using dead silence in the situation, and this is another excellent change that I'm really happy to see, because I have run into far too many situations where I've been so baffled at how an enemy was able to just sprint up on me and kill me without me hearing a thing. And then when I watch the kill cam back, it doesn't look like they're using dead silence, but I can't tell for sure, so it's just really confusing. This should clear up that confusion, and this is a change I've been hoping for quite some time. Another change that is PC specific, and I'm really happy to see this change, even though I don't play on PC. It's really nice for the PC guys out there that they finally got around to this. The stun grenades will now be much less intense for PC players, because pre-patch, if you were on PC, you could barely move at all when you're stunned, unlike on console where you can actually move quite a bit. So that should be much better for those PC players, and I'm really happy to see that change for them. Now, that's the changes that are mainly for multiplayer, although many of those also carry directly over to Warzone and everything like that too. But now I want to move into the more Warzone specific changes. And the first thing is they added new weapons to be found on the ground and in supply boxes. They've added the 725, the Mark II carbine, the EBR-14, and the 50GS. So that's great. We're going to see a bit more variety in the loot that we can find on the ground. Honestly, I don't know why they don't just have even more loot. Maybe that causes performance issues or something. I don't know. But it is good that we'll be seeing more variety, although I'm a little concerned about seeing 725s all over the place, but we'll just have to wait and see how that ends up playing out. On top of that, within Warzone, they've made it so shotguns can no longer get a one-hit kill on enemies that have full armor unless you're using stopping power. If you guys weren't aware, with the Model 680 shotgun, at point-blank ranges, if you hit every single pellet, it would be a guaranteed one-shot kill, even if the enemy had 3 full armor plates on. And while that was kind of nice to be able to have that power, for the sake of balance, I do think this makes sense. It was very jarring to die to one shot against a shotgun when you went into that situation confident because you had full health and full armor. So yeah, I'm totally on board with this change. I think that's great. Now, another really big thing here in the settings is they added a new button layout called Bumper Ping, and they also have Bumper Ping flipped. And this allows you to ping things using the L1 button instead of having to press up on the D-pad if you're using controllers. And I think this is a great addition. However, I'm not going to be using it because there isn't a tactical version of this, and I'm not willing to give up my tactical layout. It just feels so awkward for me. It kind of sucks. I kind of wish there was a tactical option for this, but there isn't at this point at least. For those wondering now how you would use your tactical equipment with this layout, they actually made it so your equipment is on a toggle. So you actually tap up on the D-pad to toggle between your lethal and your tactical equipment, which I think is a pretty good solution considering the fact that they don't really have that many buttons to work with. So yeah, I think this is a great addition, and I'm sure a lot of people are really going to like this. I'm crossing my fingers hoping for a tactical version of this in the future. Next up, some Plunder-specific changes. Apparently, players can no longer stack self-revive kits in Plunder, which is great. Also, players that are spectating, so they're waiting to respawn, will still get Plunder payouts from contracts, but they'll only get 40% of the value. Which again, that seems to make sense to me. I think it's fine that they get some, because maybe you were like really close to completing a contract and you just happen to get killed right towards the end, and then your teammates managed to finish it off. I do think you should get at least some of the reward out of that. Then within all of Warzone, they made it within the buy stations. There are now different tabs, so you have your kill streaks as well as your items. So that'll just make navigating that a little bit easier, I think. Or I find it to be a little bit faster and easier this way. And at the buy stations, they also increased the loadout drop price from 6,000 cash up to 8,500 cash. And I think that's a good step in the right direction. I do feel like loadout drops were just way too easy to earn super early on into a match at just 6,000 cash. And 8,500 seems a little bit more reasonable to me. But we'll have to wait and see how that ends up playing out. Maybe I'll end up changing my mind and wanting it to go back to 6,000. We'll just find out. Now, one last really nice thing that they changed within Warzone is now when you down a player and they leave the game, they will still be dropping their loot on the ground, because before this update, they wouldn't actually drop any loot when they left the game. And that was really frustrating because some people could get really cheesy with that, and then you don't end up getting the loot off of that player you killed. And also, when they do that, it should be counting towards your kill count. Whereas again, previously, if they left the game before you were able to finish them off completely, you wouldn't be awarded the kill. Now, my big question, and something I haven't been able to test yet, because this is the kind of thing that you have to wait until somebody does this to you. You don't really have that much control to test it for yourself. I don't know if this also covers the situations where you down an enemy player and then they hit the button to give up and basically kill themselves while they're on the ground without leaving the match. Before this update, yes, they would still drop their loot, but you wouldn't be awarded the credit for the kill, which was really frustrating. I'm hoping this update fixed that as well, but we'll just have to wait and find out once we get some more playtime and run into that particular situation. But with that, that pretty much covers it for all of the important changes with this update. Again, there was a bunch of other little bug fixes and stuff like that, so if you want to check all of those out, you can just check out the patch notes. I don't really have anything to add to those, so might as well just read them instead of hearing me read them for you. But of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what are you guys thinking about this update so far? Are you pretty happy with the changes and the additions? Or were you expecting more, or are you just straight up unhappy with some of the changes they've made? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.